I'm going to be talking a little bit about my Saturn return. Next month, March 2026, marks 1 year of Saturn return. As I say that already, my spirits, they just pop in and they're like, you need to talk about this. I just immediately thought back to what 2025 was really about for me and what I was able to channel for the collective as well, regarding that whole experience. The biggest lesson that has revealed itself in my Saturn return thus far is simply trusting my intuition. I am one of the last groups of 90s babies, and there is a couple of us. So there are Saturn in Aquarius babies, there's Saturn and Pisces babies, and there's Saturn in Aries babies. I believe these three groups are the last of the 90s babies, right? Like right before we get into some of the 2000s. Please know I'm using sidereal astrology, so if you come across this video, you may want to recalculate your birth chart if you are born between 93 or 94 and 2000 if you're listening to this content, okay? I spent a lot of time unpacking Saturn and Aquarius, which was a really, really eye-opening time, to say the least. It came with blessings and it also came with lessons. And I think the biggest lesson was about decentering and realizing that some things just aren't about you. But if you make it about you, then it will be about you. So it's kind of like there's times where if we center ourselves in something, it's gonna hurt us really, really, really bad. But if we take ourselves out of the center and we kind of change our perspective of what's happening, what's going on, then we start to realize other things like, wait, this person is insecure. Wow, this person hates themselves. Wow, this person is talking to their self and they're just using me as a mirror to reflect back their trauma, right? So when you take yourself out of things, when you stop making it about you, you start realizing so many grand things that really kind of saves you from just going through the motions, having to think that everything is your burden to carry and your battle to fight. And sometimes you genuinely have to just detach from people and places and realize it's not about me. They were going to do that, whether it was me or somebody else, or whether they was here or there, they was going to do that. That's that person's journey that they have to work through, or this group of people or whatever environment, that's their journey that they have to work through. And so that was like pretty much the biggest lesson that I think a lot of people may or may not have experienced in that Saturn and Aquarius period, which was about 2021 to 2023. No, 2024. Yeah. Because it kind of, so when Saturn has the retrogrades, it'll kind of slip in and out of signs in the beginning till it really gets into the thick of whatever zodiac it's passing through. The other lesson that Saturn and Aquarius really brought to the forefront was duality, right? And I say this in a lot of my content because it's something that I had to process as well. That's why I shared it with you. But duality is reality, guys. Two things can always be true. There can be more than one truth. The key to having a balanced perspective of life, of yourself, of any situations that you're in, is realizing that everything is not ever going to be all negative, all bad. Everything is not going to just be all one way or all the other way. There's always going to be a give and take, a ebb and flow, a pro and a con. And when you can take in the full experience of something and then be able to assess, okay, does this serve me more than it's disservicing me? Then you kind of have a more realistic point of view and you have better expectations, right? Than just thinking, oh, everything's going to be so amazing and I'm going to meet this perfect person or I'm going to have this perfect life or whatever. Everything's going to be perfect. No, nothing's ever going to be perfect. I think part of adulting is realizing that you can create your reality. Every day you have an option to get up and to make choices that will create your day. And you can break it up further than that. You can create your morning. You can architect your night. Every piece that you're putting together is shaping something up. But you also have things that are bigger than you, things that are not about you, things going on around you that subconsciously or even consciously influence your life, right? And so there's things you can control, things you can influence, and things you can't. And so it's just learning how to have a balanced point of view so that you're not so swayed and disappointed all the time, you know? So guys, I made so much content about Saturn going through Aquarius. That was a really challenging time for me. I got to sort of kind of reinvent myself. And I think that's one of the themes too, is like, with Saturn and Aquarius is like, you can reinvent yourself, you can upgrade, you can get better, at any moment, but it's about the choice to do it, So that was kind of what that time period was about for me. But it was also very much about, like, I guess what you're willing to sacrifice. I guess you could say certain freedoms or certain accesses, or whatever. So long story short, I wasn't willing to sacrifice that much. So, and I mean, and that's good, that's not bad. What happens when Saturn changes signs is it's not something that you're necessarily fully conscious of until after the fact, or unless you have, information like the information that I'm putting out right now. Things will happen like setting changes, you may find yourself in new environments, new places that really shape who you are for the next course of your life or the future. All right, let's just leave it at that. Yes, you'll find yourself in new environments that are shaping who you are or who you're going to become. It's kind of like when we're talking about Saturn moving into a new sign, you have to really zoom out and focus on the big picture. Because if not, you're going to totally miss what Saturn is doing in your life. So Saturn is now in Pisces for almost a full year. And people who are born, I want to say like people who are born maybe late 96. Yeah, late 96 to like sometime in 98, maybe early 98. They probably have Saturn in Pisces. But I'm not sure because I ain't about to do all that calculating. But that's a little guesstimation. So for many people born Saturn in Pisces, I have an article on Tumblr about this as well. It's very long. For a lot of people with Saturn and Pisces, they may have felt like they didn't really get the chance to be a kid in all the ways. Like, it's not that we didn't have a childhood. We did have a childhood, but it's like there was some part of our childhood that we really didn't get to maybe fully experience sometimes. Pisces deals heavily with children. Pisces is the sign that talks about babies. Oftentimes, you'll hear people say, "Oh, if you see two fish together in a dream, you're pregnant." Well, two fish is the same symbol for Pisces, right? So, as a Saturn and Pisces baby, it's not that I didn't have a childhood. I definitely did. But I think that I may have not gotten the leisure to be a baby. You know what I mean? Like, I maybe had to be emotionally strong when I shouldn't have had to be emotionally strong. And that's the core experience of a Saturn and Pisces baby. you were put in situations as a child that overstimulated you, robbed you of being able to process and feel your feelings first before everybody else around you. And so what happened to you as a child is that you almost became numb and you almost had no feelings, or you maybe thought you didn't have feelings because you were constantly processing all these energies and emotions of other people. And so you never really learned how to sit with your own. And that's what adulting is for a Saturn and Pisces baby. Adulting is pretty much a translation for Saturn return, right? We talk about adulting in life as paying bills and, having your own house, your car, having a decent job. But spiritually, morally, developmentally, intellectually, there are different forms of adulting that has absolutely nothing to do with the material world. As I mentioned before, for Saturn in Aquarius, that adulting may be choosing how you're going to see things. Instead of letting other people define things for you, instead of letting people change your point of view, you're going to choose, hey, this is my point of view and I'm sticking with it. I'm not letting all these people change my mind, but I'm also able to see the full picture. Maybe that's the Saturn and Aquarius version of adulting, amongst other things that I don't have to talk about in this video. But for a Saturn and Pisces baby, our version of adulting is finally putting our feelings first. Is finally sitting with things that are uncomfortable and being able to process it fully and move through it fully. And it sounds easy and it sounds like light work because we talk about this all the time in spirituality. We talk about being emotional. But imagine someone who wasn't able to be emotional because maybe they were put in situations where their emotions could literally put them in danger. Being too emotional could get them in trouble with a caregiver. Or maybe it wasn't that they were at risk of harm. Maybe it was just that somebody, I know for me, I have two sides of the coin where that was the case in one setting with one parent, but with the other parent, they were going through, my mom, she was widowed in her late 20s when I was a little kid, under 10 years old. So I have a mom that's grieving and I'm a little kid and I'm her only child as well. And then even before that happened, I was still her only child. And sometimes as parents, as caregivers, and just people in general that we come across, people are not always conscious of their energetic output, their emotions, and how those things affect other people. And so we run into issues where people don't want to get therapy, people don't want to get help, because they think that they can just dump everything on their children, dump everything on their friends, dump everything on their partner. And then what ends up happening is you end up overstimulating people. Those people may not even be equipped to handle or educate or really assist you with the energy that you're trying to process or the emotions that you're trying to figure out or unravel. They're not equipped for that. But now you're placing these people in position to do a high level of work that they're not qualified to do. For a Saturn and Pisces baby, they were forced to be qualified to handle high levels of emotional overload, confusion, to help people unpack things that they couldn't even understand because they're kids. They're kids. And so when I say that a Saturn and Pisces baby, they didn't really get to be a baby sometimes. And they had to be strong. A Saturn and Pisces baby had to be so strong as a little kid. And it numbed them. My journey, and let me say this journey did not start when Saturn went into Pisces that I'm about to discuss. This journey started actually during the pandemic for me, when Saturn was in Capricorn. That's a whole nother, like, the way astrology works, guys, is like that's why you got to be careful who you're listening to with like this astrology stuff, because people will have you just following anything and they don't understand how simple astrology is, but also how complex it can get. So like when Saturn was in Capricorn, well, that's its home planet. That means that people who had Saturn and Capricorn in their birth chart, as well as all other Saturn placements, were extremely affected by that transit. So it didn't matter really what sign your Saturn was in, you were going to experience a kind of prequel to your Saturn return anyway, right? The work started years ago for many of us who we're just now getting to maybe some of these Saturn return experiences. The lesson and the work that I've really been doing over the years is really softening myself, really allowing myself to feel, and really just learning how to sit with discomfort. And I've been working through this in multiple ways. And over the years, it's got better and better, because I've realized that just because I have an uncomfortable emotion doesn't mean it's the end of the world. But when you don't get to process your own discomfort as a kid, that's now programmed into your subconscious that I can't be uncomfortable. I can't feel this. I can't feel this. But the truth is that you have to feel it to move through it. Learning how to sit with discomfort, learning how to honor different emotions that come up, or different physiological responses, like, being tired, being exhausted, and honoring that space allows me to reprogram my body, reprogram my mind, and reprogram my heart that this is not permanent. This is something that I can manage. This is something that, okay, I'm not feeling it today, but maybe tomorrow. I know for me personally, having a backed up system of emotions that were unprocessed for so long, it definitely influenced me being diagnosed and having clinical depression. That's something that I still have to be mindful of, though I'm not necessarily struggling with depression at this present moment because of all the work that I've done. The key to my adulting, the key to my Saturn returning, is just being able to sit with my feelings, process my feelings for myself, and put my feelings first. We talk about trusting our intuition so much in spiritual spaces, but sometimes I feel like we don't always do a good job of unpacking what that really is and what that really looks like in real time, because we don't realize that sometimes it's not a look, it's a feeling, it's a premonition, it's a sign, it can be so many ways to follow your intuition, quote unquote. One of the biggest topics in spiritual spaces is learning how to tell the difference between anxiety and your intuition, or when you are letting fear control you versus, wait, this is my actual intuition speaking to me. I think the biggest thing that I've discovered is sometimes you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. Like sometimes you have to just be fully present and fully immersed in the experience, in the moment. Like you just have to go through it to really find out what your spirit is saying to you, to figure out what your intuition is picking up about the people that are around you or the environment you're in or whatever it might be. Like you just have to actually go through it and like live life, and that's when you'll experience your real intuition. You don't always experience, like I think sometimes a lot of people think intuition is always going to happen prior to the experience, you know? People say, oh, I should have followed my intuition, you know? And it's like they'll say that after something bad happens, which either means that, okay, your quote unquote intuition kicked in before you experience whatever you experience, or maybe it happened during the experience and you still didn't listen, but now that you're where you are, you're like, ooh, I should have listened to that, right? The point I'm trying to make is that like you're not always going to know the difference between fear and intuition until you're in the moment, you know? So, like, yes, you can have something come up in you prior to engaging with whatever it is that may not be for you, but you can also have that same thing happen while you're fully immersed, living life, doing whatever it is, and right in the smack dab middle of it, your intuition can kick in and say, nope, this is not for me. And you can still change your course of direction. You have that much freedom. But that's kind of what I'm really fully becoming conscious of, is like my intuition is with me at all times, but my intuition is not always going to be this fairy tale, you know, sparkly experience, or it's not going to be what the spiritualists say that it is. Sometimes it's going to be, I made a decision. While I'm in the midst of that decision playing out, I'm realizing this ain't it. And because my body, my spirit, my higher self, whatever parts of me are coming through with a loud no, I can change the course of my direction. I can change my decisions. I can change my life in that moment to align with whatever part of my intuition is speaking to me, whether that be a vibe that I caught, whether that be an emotion that I'm picking up, or even if it's not something so invisible or so woo woo, but it might just be, yeah, I'm literally too exhausted to participate in whatever this is. That's following your intuition too. Again, I think that sometimes when we talk about following our intuition, we're only talking about the woo woo part of things. And like I said, your intuition shows up in so many ways. It shows up in your body, it shows up in your subconscious, it shows up in the way you speak about things, it shows up in your external reality or in your environment, you know, like we think something is a coincidence and, oh, that was weird. And it's like, yeah, it was weird because it's your intuition, it's your ancestors telling you this is not what, you know, this is not it. I think the biggest blessing that can come out of putting your feelings first, honoring your emotions, being able to sit with discomfort, the blessing that comes from that is a couple things. You're going to raise your vibration. You're not going to be so weighed down energetically. You're not going to be burdened by other people's energies and emotions, and you learn how to not necessarily be a dumping ground for everybody. And I'm not saying literally, but I'm saying spiritually, you're not just letting people come and dump all their ugly little emotions on you, dump their grief, dump their pain, dump their discomfort, or even dump their trauma on you. You're also not gonna stand by and just be triggered all the time, because that's another thing. It's like someone with Saturn and Pisces, they may have been triggered by so many things all the time, or they might have been constantly triggered by somebody, probably a caregiver or somebody they live with, or who knows, I don't know your birth chart, but they may have constantly been triggered to the point where they're not even able to respond properly to things that trigger or upset them. When you put your feelings first, when you honor your emotions, when you create space for you to feel your own self and your own body, now you're more aware of your triggers. You're more aware of things that don't sit right with you. It's not so easy to just sweep things under the rug anymore. Once you become aware of how things really sit with you and make you feel energetically in your spirit, you're going to raise your vibration. You're going to be more self-aware. You're going to be more environmentally aware. You're not going to just be okay with anything and everything, and you're not just going to brush it off, because now you're able to attune to the environment, the room, the energy, the vibe, the people that you're around. You're able to really touch them, and I don't mean literally, but I'm saying you can feel the energies of everything around you, because now you've processed a lot of that junk and it's out. A lot of the junk is gone. And this may also translate into having a heightened sense of intuition. So this is the beautiful thing, even though as a Saturn and Pisces baby, we may have been robbed of our senses. And it's not that, when I say robbed, I don't literally mean that we were literally robbed. What I mean is that we may not have been given the opportunity to feel or process things for ourselves. We were just overloaded, overstimulated with energy and emotions that other people had around us, right? And so the gift in that, though, is that when you clean out all of that gunk, all that energy that's not yours, because a Saturn and Pisces baby may have to do a lot of spiritual cleansing. This is something that was really interesting to me as I kind of stepped into this spiritual journey and the spiritual spaces. Like, when I started learning more and more about ancestors and things like that back in 2020, I took so many spiritual baths, y'all. Like, I just knew I got to get something up off of me and up out of me. And it was a lot of energy that I had to release to get to where I am now, to be the person that I am now. And I probably still have energy that I can release. But you get to a point as a Saturn and Pisces baby where you learn to transmute. And that's another gift and blessing that you can obtain from the experience of Saturn and Pisces, whether you are a natal Saturn and Pisces or not. You're going to learn how to transmute every experience, negative or positive, into something beautiful, into something that resonates with you, whether that be art, whether that be writing, whether that be helping other people. You're gonna have that gift of transmutation, of rebirthing, of transforming heavy, dense, dark energies into something lighter, into something that makes sense, into something that is beautiful in its own unique way. Some of these topics, you'll notice that I've spoken on these things in tidbits throughout various pieces of content. This is just a formal video to really, unpack the first year of Saturn and Pisces, and to also share what I'm processing as well while I'm going through my Saturn return. So I think that a major gift that this transit is going to bless a lot of people with, including myself, is emotional freedom. Realizing that the future version of you doesn't have to be so weighed down by other people's energy, or energy that just doesn't serve them. You're no longer a junkyard for other people's emotions, people that don't want to go to therapy, people that don't want to get help, people that don't want to, raise their own vibration and pour into themselves and do the spiritual work or whatever it may be to get their energy together and be able to process their own emotions in healthy ways. You're no longer a landfill for emotions that other people don't want to deal with. For many of us, we're gonna be experiencing this beautiful new level of emotional freedom that we haven't felt in a while. And with that emotional freedom, you're going to also be able to really fully come back into your senses and your own body. Because when you're chained energetically, and I'm saying chained, but the real term that I should be using is when you have cords attached to all these people and environments and situations, and they're sending energy to you that is not best for you. You're chained. You're not free. You're weighed down emotionally, energetically, even to a biological level. You will be halted. You'll be stagnated. Maybe not because anything you're doing, but just what you're attached to. You do have to go through a process of cord cutting as a Saturn and Pisces baby. Baby, I could do a masterclass on cord cutting, okay? But you, a person watching this who may not have Saturn and Pisces, you may be realizing that you do have to dead some attachments. You do have to end some relationships, end some friendships in order to be energetically and emotionally free, in order to not be weighed down, in order to have the correct vibration that you need to be in alignment with things that are for you. I'm going to mention this and I'm going to close this video out. But your intuition, your body, whatever other woo-woo label that you want to slap on what I'm going to say, is not just for predicting the worst, siphoning out negativity and the wrong energy. It's also for recognizing when you are in the right energy, when you are around somebody that's good for you, that cares for you, that wants to pour into you. As you process coming back into your body, as you process what it means to put yourself first, put your emotions first, as you Learn how to trust yourself on a deeper level. Remember to trust yourself with the good things too. Remember to believe your body, believe your energy when you come across things that are good, are healthy. Don't just use your intuition for negativity. Don't just use your discernment. Don't just use your body to try to predict what's going to go wrong next. Make sure that you are using your energy, your vibration, your intuition, your feelings to know when something is right for you too. Even things that are good for us, even things that excite us, can still elicit fear. It can still elicit anxiety, but that doesn't mean it's bad for you. It just means that maybe it's new. Maybe it is something that is causing you to be fully present with your emotions, to be fully aware of yourself. We're going to have more conversations about Saturn going through Pisces. And whether you are a natal Saturn and Pisces baby like myself or not, I hope that you can fully embrace what's happening to you right now and just trust the flow, trust your energies, and see what happens when you follow your heart, when you follow that energetic alignment, and you don't put those things on the back burner anymore.